Hello everyone. Today, you wake to a quiet that doesn't feel earned, not peaceful, not gentle. It's the kind of quiet that settles in your bones too early, like waking from a dream you can't remember. Only that something about it was wrong. You're still under the woolen blanket, scratchy and warm, your breath clouding in the cold morning air. The fire's out. It must have died hours ago, leaving behind the faint scent of ash and damp smoke that always seems to cling to your clothes. Your hands, rough and half frozen, fumble for your boots. The stone floor is colder than you remember it being yesterday. Outside, the light is strange, pale but sharp. The kind of light that looks like spring but carries no warmth. You pull open the door, slowly. The wood creaks. It always creaks, but today it sounds louder and lonelier. There's no wind, no birdsong, no smell of morning bread drifting through the air. It takes you a few seconds to realize the baker's oven hasn't been lit. Down the narrow lane, old Marta, the one who sells eggs and never misses a sunrise, stands frozen beside her cart. There are no eggs today, just straw. Her eyes flick toward the walls. You hear the town bell ring, but not the usual rhythm. This isn't for mass, and it's not for market. This one is slower. One toll, pause, another. Not an alarm, not yet, but close. You step into the street. More doors are shut than open. That's odd. This time of year, most people sleep with shutters cracked, letting in the sun. But now, everything feels closed, tensed, like the town itself is holding its breath. At the well, the usual line is missing. A boy stands there alone, holding a bucket that's nearly as tall as he is. He stares down into the black water, not moving. You nod to him. He doesn't respond. Your neighbor, Thomas, the blacksmith's apprentice, is dragging a sack of flour across the square. He glances up, and his face is pale, sweaty. He doesn't say hello. You start to hear murmurs, low, cautious ones. They were seen by the river. No, farther than that, 3 hills east. My cousin saw their horses, dozens. It's just raiders. It has to be, not them, not a siege. A siege. There it is, the word. It drops like a stone in your stomach. You try not to let it show, but the weight is already settling. Because that's the thing about a siege. It doesn't start with a battle cry. It starts with silence, with rumors, with watching eyes on the horizon and meals that suddenly feel too big. You walk up toward the outer wall, just far enough to see the watchtower. A man is pacing there. He keeps shading his eyes against the sun, peering toward the hills. You see another guard join him. They speak briefly. Then both stop moving, just staring. You turn back. The market square is emptier than it should be. No one is shouting prices. No one's arguing over a bruised apple or counting out coppers for honey. And then there's the strange detail, no chickens. You hadn't noticed it until now, but usually you hear them, clucking, flapping, fussing about in the dust. Today, there's nothing. Someone has brought them all inside. That's when it hits you. People are preparing, quietly, subtly, but it's happening. Barrels of water being rolled into homes, salt meat being carried under cloaks, curtains drawn. Extra candles lit too early, a shopkeeper quietly pulling his own shutters down before midday. They know, maybe not for sure, but enough to act. And so you act too. You gather what you can from the storage pit behind your house. There's not much. A few onions, some dried lentils, a hunk of cheese that's already too hard. You wrap it all in a cloth and take it inside. Your door now stays shut. You check your family's water jar, still half full. You fill a second one just in case. It's not hoarding, you tell yourself. It's sensible. That afternoon, the church bell rings again. 3 times. Short, sharp. It means gates closing. You've only heard it once before, years ago, when a caravan of bandits passed nearby. They never even reached the walls. You pray this will be the same. From your window, you watch as the great wooden gates groan on their hinges. They close slowly, too slowly, it seems, and then the crossbar drops with a dull, final thud. Inside, the town begins to shift. Soldiers position themselves at intervals along the walls. Not many. You've always known the guard was small, mostly ceremonial. But today, they look serious. No more jokes. No more lazy leaning on spears. One of them wears a helmet that doesn't fit. Another can't stop his hands from shaking. As night falls, torches are lit at intervals around the square. You never needed this many before. But now, every shadow feels suspicious. People move quickly. No idle talk. No lingering in doorways. You lock your own door, not that it would stop anything, and settle by the hearth. No fire, though. You're saving wood. It's strange how quickly the mind adapts. This morning, you woke thinking about whether to mend your tunic. Now you're wondering how long a sack of flour will last if you stretch it thin. You lie down, but sleep doesn't come. Not really. Your ears stay alert, twitching at every sound. The hoot of an owl, a creak in the rafters, a distant cough. And then, around midnight, something new. Drums. Not loud, not frantic. Just a slow, steady rhythm. From outside the walls. Not a battle. A message. You rise, go to the shutters, and peek through. Far off, beyond the ridge, a flicker of flame. Then another. Campfires. Dozens of them. The enemy isn't at the gate. Not yet. But they are here. Waiting. And now, so are you. You sit by the window until dawn, not moving, not blinking. The town sleeps fitfully around you. The siege hasn't begun, not officially, but it has started all the same. So, dim the lights. Let the noise of the modern world fall away. And gently, we'll step into the dust of centuries past, into a town about to learn what it really means to be tested. And now, just breathe. You're not outside the story anymore. You're inside the walls. You're inside the siege. You wake with a start, but not from noise. It's the absence of it that unsettles you. That haunting stillness that's become your new normal. No carts rattling over the cobbles. No early morning bartering. Not even the barking of dogs that used to break the dawn. Just a hollow silence, stretched across the town like an old cloak draped too tightly. You lie there, in the grainy half-light of morning, listening. You wonder if maybe it was all a bad dream. The gates, the fires, the drums. But when you pull aside the rough curtain and peer through the slats of your shutter, you see them. Figures along the walls, shadows pacing, hands gripping crossbows too tightly. And beyond the walls, thin smoke rising once again. Controlled, cold. They're still there. You don't know who they are. You don't even know if the Lord in the keep knows. But the fact that he hasn't come down to address the town speaks louder than words. It means he's waiting too. Everyone is waiting. The town has changed. Not all at once, but in the quiet ways you only notice when you sit still long enough. People walk differently now, faster, heads low, speaking less. Children no longer run free in the alleys. They stay close to their homes, pressed to their mother's skirts, eyes wide and unsure. There's a hum in the air, like the sky is holding its breath along with the rest of you. This morning, you go to the baker's stall, half hoping he might be back. He isn't. His shutters are closed, his hearth cold. But there's a note scratched into the wood with charcoal. Gone to the keep. Store what you can. No signature. No return date. You count your coins. A handful, worn thin from years of use. Worthless now. No one wants money. They want salt, grain, dry meat, clean water. You don't have much. At the communal well, a long line has formed. People aren't talking, but the tension is as thick as the breath fog in the cold air. A young girl in front of you drops her cup. It rolls away. No one picks it up, not even her. She just stares at it, like it's a memory from another life. The guards are still posted at the gates, but now they wear helmets. Yesterday, they didn't. Today, their faces are hidden, their eyes behind slits of iron. That tells you more than any announcement ever could. The enemy hasn't attacked, not yet. But something is different today. It's in the air. You notice the carts. There's only 1 or 2 left. Most of the oxen have been moved somewhere, perhaps inside the walls of the keep. The animals that remain look restless. Even the chickens, confined now to small cages or storerooms, have gone strangely quiet. A man walks past you with a wheelbarrow full of grain sacks. He's followed by 2 children carrying jugs. You recognize him. He used to be the tailor. Now he looks like a soldier of necessity, his face hard, his feet bare. You pass by the chapel. The door is open, but no one's inside. Only the sound of wind brushing through the rafters. Someone left a candle burning there, and a loaf of bread at the altar. An offering, maybe, or desperation. At midday, the town crier walks the square. But he doesn't shout. He speaks low, quietly, to small groups at a time. You draw near, pretending not to listen, but hanging on every word. Nothing confirmed, he says, but scouts saw movement at the old mill. They're building something. Might be towers, might be siege engines, might be nothing. No one speaks. You glance to your right. An older woman is clutching a small wooden icon to her chest, her lips moving silently. She's not praying. She's bargaining. Someone else mutters that the enemy was heard speaking Latin. Another swears it was Norse. No one knows for sure. Foreign tongues blend into one when spoken through fear. You return home and begin taking stock. You never realized how much space empty shelves take up. You count everything. 8 onions, 3 small wheels of cheese, 2 jars of pickled beans, a 1/4 sack of flour. Enough for days if you ration. Maybe. You've started drinking more water than you need, as if storing it in your own body will help when the well runs dry. As the sun dips again and the shadows stretch long and eerie across the square, you hear it. A single horn, distant, drawn out, echoing from beyond the hills. Then silence. No follow-up. No call to arms. No thunder of hooves or clash of swords. Just one note, carried by the wind. You freeze. Everyone does. You think, is this the moment? But nothing comes. Night falls like a curtain, thick and full of dread. You sit near the window again, your candle unlit, watching, waiting. Out there beyond the wall, fires still burn. The enemy is eating, laughing maybe, planning, or simply living. You envy them strangely. Because while your town holds its breath, they breathe freely. This is what no one tells you about the beginning of a siege, that it doesn't begin with war, but with waiting. A slow unraveling of time, a peeling away of routine, until even your heartbeat feels unsure of its rhythm. And so, you stay still. You become a shadow in your own home, watching the world you once knew turn strange and brittle. Tomorrow, you think. Maybe tomorrow it begins. Or maybe it already has. You wake to a sound you've never quite heard before, not in this way. A kind of groan, deep, wooden, reverberating through the stone streets like the moan of something ancient. You don't even realize you're out of bed until your feet hit the floor and your hands pull the curtain aside. The light outside is different again, not the cold grey of siege mornings, but yellowed, heavy, as if the very air had thickened, and then you understand what the sound was. The gates, closing, fully. Not the casual latching of wood for the night. Not the ceremonial clatter you'd heard on feast days or when the noble made his yearly speech. This was the drop of the final bar, the locking of iron into stone, the sealing of the town. A sound you won't forget. You throw on your cloak, worn and fraying at the edges, and step into the street. Already you feel it. The tension. It doesn't come from shouting. There is none. It comes from stillness. From the way people look around corners now instead of walking straight. From how every window is now shuttered, even though it's daylight. You make your way toward the gate. Half the town has done the same, standing in uncertain clusters near the walls. Some whisper. Most just stare. A few of the guards are stationed here, their armor mismatched, their spears still too clean. They won't meet your eyes. The gates are tall, massive. But you've never noticed how small they can make you feel until now. On the other side, you know what lies there. Open fields, gentle slopes, the narrow road to the next town, places you'd walked freely just a week ago. Now they're closed off by a thickness of oak, iron, and finality. You press your hand to the gate. It's warm. You're not sure why that bothers you. And then there's the silence again, that haunting quiet. But beneath it, something else, a pressure, as if the air has weight now. The gate hasn't just shut the enemy out, it's shut something in. People begin to drift away, unsure of what to do next. You linger, just long enough to see the guard captain approach. He speaks softly to one of the soldiers, too far for you to hear. Then he nods toward the wall. That's when you realize they're moving archers into position. Not many, but enough to make you feel watched. You leave the gate behind and return through the narrow lanes of the town. Everything looks different now. Tighter, grayer, even the sky seems lower. Clouds have crept in unnoticed, hanging just above the rooftops like a lid. You pass by a group of women patching cracks in the side of a house with mud and straw. One of them looks up. Her eyes meet yours. She doesn't smile. By midday, the keep sends down orders. You hear them spread like ink through water. 2 days of firewood allowed per house. No one to approach the wall without a guard. All remaining animals to be brought into central enclosures. You follow the trickle of townsfolk to the livestock yard. It's chaos in the quiet way. Pigs squealing, goats bleating, hens fluttering in terror. Not because of noise, but because of confinement. Animals don't understand siege. They only understand that something is wrong. You help your neighbor wrangle his stubborn mule into the makeshift stable. He thanks you with a nod. He hasn't spoken in hours. The air here stinks already. It will only get worse. Later, back in your own home, you take inventory again. It's become a ritual, a comfort of numbers. What you have: half a sack of oats, a bit of honey, some salted fish, water from the well, but you're not sure how long it will last if they block the source. What you lack: answers. In the afternoon, children are called in. No one tells them why, just that it's time to come home. One boy runs too fast and trips. He cries. The sound echoes down the street like a wound. And then, as if the day hasn't done enough, there's the first sound of testing. From beyond the wall, you hear it. A single, deliberate thump, then another. Not an attack, just a message. A ram, perhaps. Testing the lower gates. Not with force, not yet, but with certainty. A reminder. You sit by the window, eyes unfocused, and feel the sound ripple through your ribs. Like a slow drum beat. A distant footstep you can't escape. The sun begins to dip. Torches are lit again, earlier than usual. You notice they're being placed differently now. More of them. Not for light, but for visibility. For defense. In the square, someone sharpens a blade. The rasp of metal on stone carries unnaturally far. Someone else pours vinegar across a doorway. Superstition? Maybe. Or maybe just something to do with your hands while the world edges closer to something unthinkable. That night, you don't even try to sleep. You sit in the dark, listening to the creak of the rafters, the shifting wind, the low murmur of voices drifting through stone walls. No laughter anymore. No songs. Only whispers. You remember stories from the old woman who lived on the hill. Tales of the last time your town was under threat decades ago, when the Eastern Baron tried to starve the valley. She'd said, "It's not the first strike that breaks a town. It's the closing of the gates." You didn't understand then. Now you do. Because this is not about courage or weapons or strategy. This is about what happens to a town when the outside world disappears. When the gates close not just against danger, but against escape. You're sealed in now, with your thoughts, with your fear, with your neighbors, who might soon be strangers, with your hunger, not yet sharp, but coming, with your gods, if they still listen, and with time, too much time. So you sit, you breathe, you listen. And outside, in the darkness beyond the torchlight, the enemy waits. Just like you. It's the 4th day since the gates closed, though time has already begun to stretch and tangle in your mind. You try to keep track, by notches on the hearth, by the burn of morning light, by the rhythm of meals, if you can call them that. There's no official announcement, no dramatic shift, just a slow unraveling. It starts with the sounds, or the lack of them. You wake up not to birds or distant chatter, but to the dry crunch of boots over gravel, to the creak of leather armor, to the sound of someone coughing behind a wall. The kind of sounds that remind you how close you all are now, and how little there is to do. At first, you try to stick to your routine. Rise early, stretch, stoke the fire, sweep the floor. A habit is a tether, a thin one maybe, but it holds you together. But by the 2nd hour, there's nothing left to clean. By the 3rd, you've gone over your supplies again, even though you already know what's there. By midday, you find yourself listening. Not to conversations, there are fewer of those. You listen for signals, a bell, a horn, a shout, a knock on your door. Instead, you hear wind. The day draws on slowly, as if it resists moving forward. You drift through the narrow alleys of your neighborhood, where others are doing much the same, pretending they have tasks, rechecking locked doors, stirring pots with nothing new in them, tending to animals that pace and sniff and sense more than they should. You see Marta, the old midwife, sitting by the well with her feet in a basin. She hums a tune, but her eyes aren't focused. She's somewhere far off. You pass a small boy drawing in the dirt with a stick. He's sketching a tower with flames. You pause. He doesn't look up. Someone has painted a charm on a wall, a crude drawing of a hand with an eye in the palm. It's meant to ward off curses, but even the chalk looks tired. At the chapel, a few people kneel silently. No candles are lit. They pray, not for victory, that's long gone. They pray for time to pass, because now, waiting is the siege. You're not fighting, not yet, but you're being worn down, bit by bit, like a river under stone. You return home and find yourself moving things, rearranging dried herbs, repositioning jars, checking again the bottom of the flour sack. It's almost comical, this need to do something. But idleness in a siege is dangerous, not just because of fear, because it gives your mind too much room. You think of people you haven't seen in days. The candle maker, the old man who sat in the square every afternoon. You wonder where they are. You wonder if they're alive. In the late afternoon, you climb up to the top of your roof, where the slope gives just enough view over the wall. And there they are. The enemy. Not far. Their camp is sprawled and methodical. Small fires, low tents, rows of stacked timber and barrels. They move without urgency, like people who know there's no rush. You watch them for a long time. They're eating. You can almost smell it. Meat roasted over open flame. Rich and heavy. You swallow and your stomach tightens. You didn't even notice the hunger growing. You watch a man, a soldier maybe, sit beside a cart and carve something from wood. A toy. A charm. You wonder who it's for. It's strange to realize they're just people too, but that doesn't make them less terrifying. You climb down before you're seen. That night, your neighbor knocks once on your door. You open it slowly. He has a small flask. "Wine," he says. You nod and take a sip. It's watered down, but it's warm, sharp, real. You sit together without speaking for a while. Sometimes that's all you need. When he leaves, you stare at the door for a long time before locking it again. You sit by the fire. It crackles low and still. Nothing happens. No attack. No signal. Just another day of silence, closed behind wooden walls, under the gaze of unseen eyes. This is the part they never write in the stories, the stretch of days when nothing happens and everything unravels. No glory, no clash of swords. Just the sound of your own heartbeat in the stillness, the hum of dread in the floorboards, and the endless weighty wait for something, anything, to change. The bread is thinner today. You notice it when you chew, not from taste, but texture. More air than grain, more effort than sustenance. You tear off another piece and count your bites, trying to stretch the illusion of fullness. There's no flour left in the cupboard. You know this. You checked yesterday, and the day before. Still, you check again. A part of you hopes a crust might have materialized overnight, born of hunger or magic or sheer will. It hasn't. The bread was made from what remained at the bottom of the sack, mixed with water, then left near the fire in a desperate hope it would rise. It didn't, but you baked it anyway. Because what else could you do? You eat slowly, as if pretending slowness is a kind of luxury. Outside, someone is chopping wood. You can tell by the rhythm, careful, measured, deliberate. Each strike a small ritual. They're not cutting to stockpile now. They're cutting to survive the day. There was a time when meals were communal, when bread was shared at the baker's window, when the tavern spilled stew and songs into the streets. Now, food is something hoarded, hidden, whispered about. A man passed you yesterday with a small sack. You saw how he held it, tight against his ribs, like a newborn or a secret. That's what food becomes in a siege, sacred. It shifts from nourishment to symbol, a sign of control, a measure of time, a way to remember you're still alive. And with each passing day, it fades. You go to your neighbor's garden, or what remains of it. Dry stalks, wilted greens. Someone's already stripped most of it. You pull a few bitter leaves from the soil and pocket them, then immediately feel guilty. They're not yours, but hunger blurs those lines. You're not stealing from a person, you're borrowing from survival. Later, by the well, you see a woman trying to boil roots. She stirs the pot slowly, as if coaxing something more out of the earth. You offer to carry a bucket back to her home. She accepts with a nod, no words. You wonder what her soup will taste like. You wonder if it matters. The ration lines have grown longer, not because the supplies are ample, but because everyone's afraid they'll be cut off completely. You stand in line, holding your cloth pouch, even though you doubt it will be filled. Around you, eyes dart. People count each other's steps. Someone coughs. You see the flinch ripple down the line. No one wants to be noticed anymore. You get a handful of dried peas. Enough for a stew, maybe. You pocket them like treasure. Back at home, you set the pot on the coals and wait for the water to boil. Then you add the peas. Slowly. One by one. Not for flavor, for time. The smell is faint, earthy, humble. You sit beside it and close your eyes. You think about the last real meal you had. Roasted rabbit with herbs, a heel of sour bread, and wine so dark it shimmered like ink. You remember the warmth of that day, the way your sister laughed at something your father said, the candlelight on the table, the feeling that life was normal. You open your eyes. There's no rabbit now, just peas and hope. Someone knocks on your door. You tense. It's a girl, maybe 10. She holds out a carrot, small and cracked. She doesn't say a word, just gives it to you, then walks away. You don't know her name, but you'll remember her face. And the carrot, it tastes better than anything you've had in days. That night, you eat slowly again, not to pretend you're full, but because each bite is part of the rhythm now, part of the resistance. This is how you survive a siege, not with swords, but with small acts of defiance, with meals stretched thin, with sharing when you can, with remembering flavor, even when it's gone. You finish your meal, you clean the pot. You sit by the fire and listen to your stomach, grateful that it hasn't begun to ache yet. You don't know how long that gratitude will last, but for now, you have eaten, and that is enough. You never realized how much water you used until it started to vanish. It's not dramatic, no sudden dryness, no dusty well floor staring back like an omen. No, it's slower than that, more insidious. One morning, the rope takes longer to return with the bucket. The next, the water is cloudier, smelling faintly of iron and earth. Then, the real signal, guards posted at the well. That's when you know. The water's running low, they don't announce it. They don't need to. When people see the soldiers standing at the stone lip, arms crossed, eyes wary, the message is clear. This is no longer a communal gift. It's a resource to ration. And so the rules begin, whispered at first, then spoken aloud. 1 bucket per household. 2. If you have more than 5 people, no bathing, no washing clothes, no using water for anything that doesn't pass through your lips. You adapt. You have to. You ration your own supply with an almost ritualistic discipline. In the morning, you measure half a cup to rinse your face. Not to clean it. There's no luxury for that now. But to wake yourself. You drink only when your tongue feels dry. You learn to ignore thirst. You dream of streams. You remember the cold shock of river water around your ankles in summer. You remember splashing it into your mouth without thinking. Now, the thought of such waste is unbearable. Bathing becomes a memory. Your skin itches. You scratch at your arms absently. You smell the same clothes every day, the same fabric steeped in smoke and fear. You begin to recognize others by scent, some sour, some earthy, some tinged with sickness. No one mentions it. You've all agreed, without speaking, to pretend the world still holds its dignity. At night, you boil water to stretch it further. 1 pot for everyone in the house. You sip carefully, holding it in your mouth like wine before swallowing. Sometimes you just stare into the bucket, as if it might refill itself. One day, the well yields less. The bucket scrapes. People murmur. Someone suggests digging a second one. The idea is met with silence. No one wants to admit how futile that would be, or how dangerous. You see a woman try to collect dew with linen. She lays it out before dawn, then wrings it into a bowl. It gives her a few spoonfuls. Enough for a child, maybe. Another man, older, has taken to pacing near the wall where runoff gathers in a dip. He watches it like a prophet, hoping the rain will return. It doesn't. You hear rumors about barrels hidden in basements, about nobles who've hoarded clean water behind locked doors. You don't want to believe it, but you do. One evening, there's shouting near the well. A boy, too young to know better, tries to take a second bucket. The guard stops him. The boy spits. Someone throws a rock. The crowd tenses. It doesn't break, but the silence afterward is heavier than a fight would have been. You learn to cook without water. Or rather, to cook with so little, it's more like steaming air than food. You soak dried beans overnight in your mouth, then chew slowly. Your dreams shift. They no longer feature escape or rescue. They feature fountains, rain, the sound of it hitting stone, the feel of it trickling down your arms, pooling at your feet. You wake from those dreams with your tongue stuck to the roof of your mouth. And worse, you're grateful to wake, because in sleep, your thirst feels real. In waking, it's manageable. Mostly. One afternoon, a small child collapses near the chapel. Her lips are cracked. Her mother carries her away without speaking. You pass a man muttering about catching rats, not for meat, but for moisture. You hope he's joking. You hope he's wrong. You begin noticing other things too. Cracks in the walls of homes, sunken cheeks, lips that barely move when they speak, and always the eyes. Looking toward the well, toward the sky, toward the walls, toward anywhere but here. You keep your bucket in the corner of the room now, covered with a cloth to prevent evaporation. You talk to it sometimes. You know it can't hear. But it helps. The human mind adapts. That's what they say. You don't know who they are, but you understand now. You don't panic anymore when the bucket's light. You don't scream when the well runs slower. You simply adjust. You drink less. You hope more. You wonder how long the body can survive on hope alone. And one day, just as you're folding your cloth over the bucket, a drop of water lands on your wrist. You freeze. Another. Then another. You look up, and for the first time in weeks it's raining. Not much, barely more than a drizzle, but enough. You run outside with the others, hands open, mouths wide. You feel like a child again, like a plant unburied, like something real. For a moment, the siege disappears. There is only water, falling from the sky, unclaimed, untaxed, undrained, a gift. And even though it only lasts minutes, you catch what you can, in jars, in pots, in your palms. And that night, you drink without counting sips. Just once, because tomorrow, the waiting will return. But tonight, you are full. It starts with the smell. You notice it before anything else, a shifting in the air, a thickness. At first, you think it's the smoke, wood burning from a dozen hearths, too much ash clinging to your cloak. But it's more than that. It follows you, clings to the folds of fabric, nestles in your hair. It's the smell of the siege. You step outside and realize it's not just your home. It's everywhere. A dense, humid stink that coats the streets like a fog. The combined breath of hundreds of people crammed too tightly into too little space. Sweat, waste, rotting food. But deeper still, something else, something more human, the scent of panic, of quiet despair. You pass the animal pens and regret it immediately. They weren't built for this. The stables overflow. Goats bleat in protest. Chickens flutter and squawk, their feathers matted. Pigs grunt in filth. There's no room to clean properly, no straw to replace. Waste piles up. A river of muck seeps into the gutters. The stable boys have stopped trying to keep up. You see it in their eyes, a dullness, a grim acceptance. In normal times, these smells would bring complaints, shouting, scolding. Now no one says a word. You all breathe through your sleeves and keep walking. Your own home has changed too. It used to smell of hearthwood and drying herbs. Now the hearth burns low, only when needed. The herbs are gone. You've used them all for broth or to mask the taste of spoiled food. Instead, there's the sour tang of old bread, the sharp bite of vinegar poured at the door to keep away rats, and spirits, the bitter scent of unwashed bodies. You've learned to live with it. Everyone has. When you gather at the well, you catch new notes on the breeze, the scent of dried blood from bandaged wounds, of spoiled meat someone tried too hard to salvage, of illness brewing in corners people pretend not to notice. And through it all, smoke. Everywhere, always smoke. You walk through it like a second skin. From cooking fires, yes, but also from signal torches, from garbage burnt in alleys, from resin-slick wood that won't stop crackling even when the flames have died. The worst is at night, when the air thickens and the wind dies and the town becomes a cauldron. You lie on your cot, unable to sleep, nose full of it. The reek of fear. It's in the fabric, in your pillow, on your fingers. There's no escaping it. You used to think of your home as a sanctuary, 4 walls, a roof, a fire, a place where you could close the door on the world. Now, the walls hold the smell in. You open a window, hoping for breeze. Instead, you get more of the same. Sometimes the scent shifts subtly. If the wind comes from the west, it carries the faint perfume of crushed lavender once planted near the chapel. But the lavender's dead now, trampled by too many boots. Other times, if the wind turns north, you catch a whiff of something acrid, something burned and buried, not from your fires, but from theirs, the enemy's. You don't want to imagine what they're burning. You do anyway. And then there's the latrines. You never appreciated how quickly waste can become a threat. The town's system, if it can be called that, wasn't designed for siege. Buckets overflow. Alleys reek. Some try to dig pits, but space is limited and soil shallow. Others dump at night, hoping darkness will forgive the stench. But nothing forgives it. It lingers. It settles in corners and under eaves. It stains the air. Even the chapel begins to smell. Once a place of wax and incense, now heavy with sweat and unwashed cloth. Prayers whispered into foulness, a bitter irony, and still, no one complains. Because to complain is to remember what it used to be like. Better to endure in silence. You develop tricks, dabbing vinegar under your nose, chewing mint leaves when you can find them, burning dry rosemary. They help, briefly. Then the smoke returns, then the rot. Then the breath of the town, sour and full. This is what they never write about. Not in songs, not in stories, not in the history told by nobles. The sensory truth of siege. It is not just fear or hunger. It is scent. The unrelenting perfume of closeness. Of too much life packed into too little space. Of survival at its most raw. And the worst part, you get used to it. You stop noticing until you step outside the gates, if you ever do, and catch your first clean breath, and realize you've forgotten what air is supposed to smell like. Nightfall isn't the end of the day anymore. It's the beginning of something else entirely. Back when the world was safer, or at least when it felt that way, dusk meant comfort, a return to hearth and home, the soft light of candles, the sound of voices over a shared meal. Night brought quiet, yes, but a kind of gentle, earned quiet. Now, it brings vigilance. The sun slips behind the walls, and everything changes. The streets, already hushed, become spectral. Torches are lit not for warmth, but for warning. Doors close with intention. Windows are shuttered tight, not for privacy, but protection. No one says good night anymore, because no one sleeps like they used to. You lie in your cot, blankets pulled high despite the heat trapped in the walls, and you listen, always listening. The sounds are different at night. Fewer footsteps, more creaks, the soft shifting of bodies on straw. Coughs, always the coughs. But it's what you don't hear that unnerves you the most. Laughter is gone, so are lullabies and music and stories. Silence has its own volume, and then there are the noises from beyond. At first they were faint, the occasional clink of armor, the far-off scrape of metal on wood. But they've grown bolder, more rhythmic. Some nights they light fires so close to the wall you can see their shadows dancing on the stone. You don't need to imagine what they're doing. You know, eating, drinking, talking, living, while you... Wait. The worst are the voices. Sometimes, if the wind turns, you hear them. Not shouts, not commands, just conversation, casual, calm. You can't make out the words, but the tone is unmistakable, unbothered, relaxed. That's what cuts the deepest. They're not in a hurry, because time is on their side. You, on the other hand, live in minutes. 10 minutes to fill a bucket, 20 to cook something from nothing, 15 to calm a crying child, 30 to try and fail to sleep. You begin to dread nightfall not because of attack, but because of what it takes from you, the illusion of normalcy. During the day, you can pretend, just a little, that life continues. At night, the truth returns. No walls are thick enough to keep out that truth. Tonight, you walk the edge of your room, counting steps. Anything to stay awake, anything to keep your mind from drifting to darker places. Outside, the torchlight flickers. You hear something, a soft thud. You freeze. Then another, closer. A knock? A fall? You press your ear to the door, nothing. Then a laugh. Not from within, from over the wall. You step back. They're playing with you, not physically, not yet, but mentally. That's the new game. Psychological siege. They don't need to breach the gate if they can breach your mind. You sit again, rubbing your temples, trying to remember what day it is. Was today the 6th since the gates closed? Or the 7th? You're not sure anymore. The hours blur together like smoke in a closed room. You hear a baby cry down the street, a dog whimper, then a shout, brief, sharp, cut off too fast. Your body tenses, your breath catches. Then, silence. No one investigates. That's a rule now. At night, you stay indoors. The walls between homes are thin. You hear your neighbors breathing. You hear your own heart. You tell yourself stories just to stay sane. You imagine the enemy falling ill, retreating. You picture cavalry coming over the hill. You think of rain falling again, washing everything clean. You remember what it was like to sleep through the night. It feels like another lifetime, and when sleep finally does come, it isn't restful. It's full of fire and screams and a door that never quite closes. You wake before dawn, gasping, and it begins again. This time, slower. This time, with more dread. Because each night strips something away, not all at once, piece by piece. Hope, rest, memory, and you know, deep down, that the night will only get longer. It begins subtly. At first, you think the animals are just tired. After all, they've been crammed together for days, their pens too small, the air too hot. Maybe they're simply resting. But then you notice it, the absolute stillness. Not just quiet, silence. A vacuum where sound used to live. The chickens stop clucking, the goats stop bleating. Even the dogs, normally restless and territorial, lie motionless, eyes wide and unblinking. They stare toward the walls. Something's changed. You step outside and feel it too. The air is thick, not humid, not heavy, but dense in some spiritual way. Like the town itself is holding its breath. You look around. Others feel it too. People speak in hushed tones, if at all. No laughter, no idle gossip. Every footstep is careful. No one whistles. No one sings. Even the children, who once played with sticks and stones in the dust, now sit quietly, hands clasped, looking toward their parents for some unspoken reassurance that never comes. You approach the well. There's a line, as usual, but there's no chatter, no complaints, only glances, quick, fearful ones, toward the north gate. You listen. You hear something, not clearly, but faintly. The flutter of a flag, the creak of leather, a breath, maybe. Then nothing. The silence deepens. And then the dreams start. That night, your sleep is shallow. When it comes, it's riddled with half-formed visions, dark corridors, a whisper in a language you don't know, shadows pressing against thin walls. You wake sweating. You aren't alone. The next morning, your neighbor says she dreamed of wolves, dozens of them, circling. Another man claims he heard crying through his wall, but no one lives on the other side. A child draws shapes in ash, spirals, eyes, doors. You try not to dwell on it, but the feeling lingers, that something is watching, waiting. Not the enemy outside, but something else, something that crept in when the animals went quiet. In the chapel, people begin to leave offerings again, not bread or coin, but stranger things. A bundle of rosemary wrapped in black cloth, a shard of mirror, face down, a lock of hair tied with red thread. The priest says nothing. He just prays longer now, and he lights 2 candles for everyone he used to. Superstition spreads faster than sickness. One night, the dogs all begin to howl, together, then suddenly stop. No one sleeps after that. You lie in bed, heart pounding, hands gripping the blanket. Your home feels smaller. Your breath feels louder. Outside, the torches flicker oddly, not with wind, there is none, but as if reacting to something unseen. And then, far off, a sound, soft, rhythmic, not drums, a chant, no words, just tone, rising, falling. You know it's them, not the enemy. Something older. Or maybe that's just the fear speaking. The next morning, a woman says her cat ran away. Another says her shadow doesn't fall right anymore, that it bends away from the light. You don't know what to believe. But you do know one thing. The quiet isn't natural. It isn't peace. It's a warning. A prologue to something worse. And somehow you begin to miss the noise. The bickering, the crying babies, the clatter of pots. Because silence, in a siege, isn't rest. It's an omen. You sweep your floor, not because it's dirty, but because the sound of the broom reassures you. You boil water, even if you don't need it, just to hear the bubbling. You hum a song from your childhood. It sounds thin, strange, but it helps. You light a candle, even when the sun's still out. Anything to keep the silence from seeping deeper. You go outside and whisper hello to your neighbor. She doesn't answer, but she nods, and that's enough. That night, when the animals still don't make a sound, you lie awake staring at the ceiling, listening for something, anything, to break the hush. And when it doesn't come, you understand. The siege has entered a new phase. One where silence is not emptiness, but presence. And now it lives with you. The first time it happens, you barely notice. A merchant forgets his own name during a trade. A boy cries when someone laughs. A woman sits by the well for hours, staring into the water without drawing a single drop. Strange, you think, but not alarming, until it begins to multiply. A man paces back and forth in front of the chapel for an entire day, reciting the same phrase over and over. They're already inside. They're already inside. No one stops him. No one speaks to him. By evening, he's hoarse. The next morning, he's gone. You ask the priest where he went. The priest only shrugs. You see others change too. People who once sang in the market now walk with heads down, muttering. A girl scratches words into the dirt, not for a game, but for something deeper, desperate. You try to stay sane by holding on to routines, but even those begin to fail you. Time warps. The sun rises and sets, but days blur. You wake unsure if it's morning or evening. You forget whether you've eaten. You hear your own voice echo back at you in ways that feel unfamiliar. And then there's the boredom, crushing, relentless. No one tells you that boredom can hurt, that it can settle into your bones like cold, that the absence of stimulation can feel as violent as the presence of fear. You count cracks in the wall. You watch a spider spin a web in your window. You trace the grain of the wooden table again and again, hoping it changes shape. It doesn't. You find yourself staring at the same patch of floor for half an hour, lost in thought, only to realize you weren't thinking of anything at all, just existing. Barely. Children sit in corners, no longer curious. They build towers from stones, then knock them down, then build them again, silently, like priests of a ritual they don't understand. You try to distract yourself with stories, with songs, with memory. But your own thoughts begin to turn against you. Small worries become monsters. A missed cough becomes a symptom. A quiet night feels like the calm before betrayal. You're afraid of sleep because it might bring dreams. But you're more afraid of what happens when you don't sleep. You notice people starting to talk to walls. You notice that you've begun to respond to them. One afternoon, a group of women begins playing a game in the square, knucklebones, old as time. But their laughter is too loud, too sudden. It echoes unnaturally. You find yourself laughing too, though you don't know why. You laugh until tears come. You're not sure where the boundary is anymore. One night you see someone standing on the roof of a nearby house, staring at the enemy fires. Not doing anything, just watching. For hours. You go to bed. When you rise, they're still there. Another night, someone begins to scream. Not out of pain, just to hear themselves. You cover your ears. You don't want to know what that kind of scream feels like. The next day, you visit the well again. A boy is trying to fish something out with a stick. He says it's a ghost. You believe him. Not because you've seen it, but because, by now, anything is possible. And then, as if to prove it, someone brings out a flute. You remember the tune. It was played during festivals, for dancing. But now, it sounds wrong, warped, like something ancient trying to remember how joy used to feel. You turn away. Even music can't help now. You light a candle, not for prayer, not for sight, just to watch something burn. You speak aloud to your own reflection. You forget how long you've been wearing the same tunic. You start to wonder if maybe this is the world now. Not under siege, but this. Forever. And in a way, you realize the siege has changed you more than you knew. Because boredom doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means everything is happening inside you, and some part of you is starting to break, not loudly, not suddenly, but slowly, like a rope fraying one strand at a time. You sit in silence again. And this time, it feels like the only thing that still makes sense. You stop marking the days, not because you've forgotten, not yet, but because the marks no longer mean anything. The stone by your hearth is covered in scratches, one for each sunrise. You used to count them like victories. Now, they feel like echoes of someone else's life. You stopped at 27. You think. It's hard to say for sure. There's no feast day to break the rhythm, no bell to mark the hours, no children's parade or seasonal fair. Time has flattened, like a road walked too often. You don't know if it's been a week or a month. Hope, too, has changed. It used to be loud, like a drumbeat or a shout over the walls. Now it's a whisper. You hear it sometimes in the rustle of dried leaves or in the sound of someone softly singing as they carry water. Not a song of joy, not anymore, but a lullaby of endurance. A murmur that says, "We're still here." You've begun to rely on signs, as if they might offer a map through the fog of waiting. A pigeon landing on your roof. Does it mean a message might come? The smell of thyme from someone's stew. Is that a sign of rationing gone well? But then, the opposite. A window that stays shuttered for 3 days. A door left ajar. A silence where a voice used to be. You begin to keep a mental list of who is still alive. Not by checking, but by remembering. Did I see her yesterday? Did I hear his laugh? When that memory fails, you walk the streets with a sense of low dread. You peer into corners. Not because you're looking for danger. You've stopped fearing arrows and swords. What scares you now is absence. You find a child's doll lying in the mud. Its face is scratched off. You stare at it for too long. You see a young man sweeping dust from his doorstep every morning, as if routine could hold the walls in place. You envy his faith. A woman in the North Quarter paints flowers on her shutters, bright red ones, like the kind that used to grow near the orchard. It's defiance, you realize, not optimism. She paints not to invite spring, but to say, I remember what it looked like. And perhaps if we survive this, I want others to remember too. You find yourself whispering the names of your parents at night. They're gone, long before this began. But the names feel like anchors, solid, real, unchanging. You clean your tools, though there is no work to do. You oil your boots. You braid your hair for the first time in weeks. Not for beauty, for memory, for the self you used to be. Because that self is fading. In the town square, someone has begun drawing in chalk again. Not messages, not warnings. Pictures. One is a ship. Another, a tree. A third, a wolf with stars for eyes. No one knows who draws them, but every morning, they're there. A message, perhaps, from someone who hasn't given up. Or maybe just a quiet rebellion against the grey. Hope doesn't come like you expect. Not with news from the outside. Not with flags or horns or distant banners cresting the hill. It comes with small things. A neighbour sharing half a boiled egg. A child playing with 2 sticks and pretending they're dancers. A candle left at your doorstep with no note. You eat less now. Not just because of rationing, because hunger has changed shape. It's no longer the roaring emptiness of the early days. It's quieter now, familiar, like a guest who overstayed and made a bed in your bones. And still, through it all, you endure. Your skin grows thin, your hair feels brittle, but your heart still beats, slowly, steadily, not out of stubbornness, but out of memory. A memory of who you were before the siege, of what the world once was, of what it could be again. And perhaps that's enough, not for joy, not for comfort, but to survive. The days without hope don't come all at once. They begin as flickers, barely perceptible shifts in the way people move or speak. A hesitation before answering. A longer pause between greetings. A softness to the shoulders, like weight being added grain by grain. At first, you think it's just exhaustion, but then it lingers and deepens. And you realize something has changed. You see it in the eyes of the guards, the ones posted on the walls. Once, they stood upright, scanning the horizon, hands firm on their weapons. Now, they slump, they lean against stone, they stare into space as if the enemy is no longer out there, but inside them. Their watch isn't for safety anymore. It's for ritual, a gesture, a going through the motions. You hear it in the priest's voice too. His sermons used to be fiery, even comforting, full of conviction, of reminders that trials make the soul, that suffering is part of salvation. But now, his tone has flattened. The words are the same, but they land like ash. He doesn't speak of deliverance anymore. He speaks of endurance. You sit in the back pew one evening, the air thick with the smell of too many bodies and too little fresh air, and you realize he no longer says soon, not even as a lie. He says, hold. Just that. Hold. As if hope has narrowed down to a single act of suspension. You hold on to routine, but it begins to slip. You forget to light the hearth one night, and no one complains. You boil water for food, then forget why. You try to recall the days of the week, but they no longer matter. In town, the chalk drawings stop appearing. The tree, the ship, the stars, all washed away by dust and footsteps. No new ones take their place. Someone scrawls a message on a wall. No end. It's scrubbed off the next day, but the words remain in your mind as if burned there. No end. You pass the woman who painted flowers on her shutters. They've begun to peel. She doesn't repaint them. You ask a merchant if he has anything left to trade. He shows you a spoon. Trade for what? He asks, not unkindly. There's nothing left to want. You nod. You understand. Wanting implies belief in the future. and fewer people seem to believe now. You find yourself standing by the wall more often, not out of curiosity, but compulsion. The enemy fires still burn. Always. The smoke rises like a slow breath. Sometimes you think they're not even watching anymore, just waiting. Why would they rush? They don't have to break your body. They only have to watch you lose your spirit. Someone tries to start a rumor that the Duke's army is coming, that they were seen 2 valleys away. But the rumor dies quickly, not from disbelief, from apathy. People don't ask, is it true? They ask, what difference would it make? Because hope doesn't just vanish, it erodes, quietly, like water carving stone. You catch yourself speaking to your food before you eat it, thanking it, apologizing, praising its texture, not out of madness, out of reverence, because you've begun to treat anything that nourishes you as holy, and still, you hold. You remember what the priest said, not victory, not salvation, just hold. So you do. You hold your breath when you hear a scream in the night. You hold your composure when a child asks, will we die? You hold a candle until the wax burns your skin. You hold the last onion for 3 more days, knowing it's not enough. And you hold the memory of a time when holding was just something your mother did to comfort you, not something you did to survive. It starts, as it always does, with a cough. Dry, persistent, easy to ignore. You hear it echo in the chapel one morning, just as you pass the open door. The sound bounces off stone, not loud but sharp, a reminder. You pause. Inside, a man sits hunched in a pew. His shoulders tremble. He holds a cloth to his mouth. He doesn't look up. You tell yourself it's nothing. Just dust. Just fatigue. But the next day, there are 3 more. A woman collapses by the well. She'd been pale for days, but now her lips are blue, her breath ragged. Someone says, it's the rot. Another says, it's the air. No one knows for sure. But everyone starts stepping back. Not far, just a few inches, but enough. By the end of the week, the sick no longer walk to the chapel. They're carried. You pass a line of straw mats laid side by side on the stone floor, like rows of fallen saints. The air inside is thick. You press a cloth to your face as you walk through, unsure if it helps or if it's just for comfort. The coughing grows, different now, wet, deep. And then the fever comes. It moves quickly. Faces you saw yesterday are flushed and glassy-eyed today. Words slur, hands shake. People mutter nonsense in the alleys. At first they call it a cold, then a flu, then nothing at all. Because names don't matter anymore. Only distance does. A family down your street seals their door with mud and straw. They don't come out for 3 days. When they finally do, only the youngest son emerges. He doesn't speak. You begin avoiding others, even the ones you love. You share meals in silence, passing bowls without touching. You sleep farther apart. You hold your breath when someone speaks too close. One morning, you wake with a sore throat. It's nothing, you tell yourself. You gargle vinegar. You pray. You boil rosemary and breathe the steam. It helps. You think. The smell in the chapel shifts. It's not just bodies anymore. It's decay. A slow, sour presence that clings to everything. Cloth, skin, memory. The priest keeps lighting candles. He stops naming the sick during prayer. There are too many. They stop burying the dead right away. The ground is too hard. The labourers are too tired. For a while they stack the bodies in the crypt beneath the keep. Then even that space runs out. Someone begins digging trenches outside the east gate, quietly, at dusk. You see them from the tower. 3 figures, working without pause, covered in filth, their faces unreadable. At night, the fires outside the walls burn brighter. You think the enemy knows. You think they can smell it. You sit in your home, clutching a cloth soaked in lavender oil. It's all you have left to fight the stench. You dab your wrists, your lips, your chest. You cough again, only once, but it echoes. The next day, a boy knocks at your door. He's no older than 10. He says his mother won't wake up. His eyes are dry. He doesn't cry. You don't go with him. You give him a blanket instead. It's all you can do. The line at the well shortens, not because there's more water, because there are fewer people. You begin to hear new sounds at night, a kind of rattling breath, soft sobs behind thin walls, doors being closed and never reopened. Some say the sickness came from inside. Others whisper that the enemy sent it, like poison through the air. But deep down, everyone knows the truth. This was inevitable. Sieges aren't just won by hunger or steel. They're won by patience and plague. The enemy waits, quietly. As always, they don't need to breach the walls. Your own bodies will do it for them. You boil more water. You clean more than ever. You sleep with the cloth still over your face. You wake every hour to check your pulse, your breath, your throat. You try to remember how it felt to be well. It feels like another life. And still, through it all, you endure. Because that's what's left. Not strength, not courage. Just the will to see another sunrise, even if it smells of smoke and sickness. It's strange, hearing joy from across the wall. At first you think your ears are playing tricks. Maybe it's the wind or the echo of some long-lost festival trapped in the stone. But no, the sound is too human, too present. Laughter, not yours, theirs. You hear it late one night as you sit by the window, chewing on stale bread, trying not to count how many bites remain. It cuts through the silence like a knife through cloth, clear, vibrant, shameless. You stop chewing, you freeze, and you listen. A second laugh, then voices, then a low hum of song. Not a battle chant, not a rallying cry, a drinking song. They're singing. You feel your stomach twist, not from hunger, but from something colder. Envy, rage, a hollow sadness that wraps around your bones. How dare they? They're out there, beneath stars you can barely see, eating meat you can almost smell, passing jugs of wine, swaying by firelight. And you're here, wrapped in smoke and sweat and silence. You can't see them, not clearly, but you know they're there. Their shadows flicker on the canvas of your imagination, full plates, flushed cheeks, relaxed shoulders, hands wiping grease from mouths, boots kicked off by the fire. They laugh again, and this time the sound doesn't echo, it digs. You press your hand to your chest, suddenly aware of how thin you've become. Your ribs are more prominent, your breath more shallow, your patience worn thin. The singing continues, not raucous, not mocking. Worse, it's casual. They aren't celebrating a victory. They're simply living outside the siege, unafraid, unchanged. You hear someone else stir in the room below, a shuffle, a sigh. They heard it too. No one says anything, because what could you say? The fires across the field burn steadily, warm and golden. You can almost see their shapes, dancing, leaning back, feeding logs into the flame like it's a game. There's no urgency, no tension. They're not worried, because they know. They know that time favors them. You stand and walk to the wall, cloak tight around your shoulders. You climb the steps and peek through the viewing slit. There, on the far side of the field, movement. A man raises a cup. Another slaps his back. Someone throws something into the fire, and it sparks upward like stars escaping gravity. You don't hate them. You wish you could, but hate is too exhausting now. Instead, you watch. And you wonder, do they think of you? Do they imagine the faces behind these walls? Do they picture you huddled by your hearth, waiting for something, anything, to change? Or do they forget you entirely, treating your suffering as background noise to their victory? You don't know. And maybe it's better that way. You descend the stairs slowly, trying not to trip on the loose stones. Back inside, someone offers you a sip of hot water. You take it. You say thank you. Neither of you mentions the music still faint in the air, because to acknowledge it is to feel it more deeply, and you're already too full of feeling. Later, lying on your cot, you imagine what their bread tastes like. You picture the crack of a crust, the softness of the center, the drip of fat from roasted meat. You wonder if their blankets are thicker, if their boots are dry, if their dreams are clean. You envy their ignorance, or maybe it's indifference. But most of all, you envy their ease, the way they move without fear, the way they laugh without guilt, the way they sleep, knowing the siege isn't their burden, only yours. And as the song fades into silence, replaced again by the hush of your darkened home, you curl tighter beneath your threadbare blanket and whisper to yourself, let them sing, let them dance, let them believe the siege doesn't touch them. Because someday, maybe not soon, but someday, songs stop. And laughter echoes back louder when no one remains to answer it. The message comes without warning. It's not brought by a herald, not shouted from the walls, not whispered by scouts under the cover of night. It comes in the simplest way, a pigeon. You're in the courtyard near the chapel when it arrives. Just a flicker of movement above, the beat of wings against air. At first, you think it's your imagination. Birds are rare now. They've long since fled the unnatural silence of the siege. But this one circles once, then twice, before landing shakily on the chapel's roof. Its feathers are streaked with dust. Its chest heaves. You step closer and see the tiny cylinder strapped to its leg. Someone notices. Within minutes, a guard is climbing the roof, reaching carefully. The bird doesn't resist. It's too tired. Too late, perhaps. The guard retrieves the message. The entire square gathers, eyes wide, breaths held. The scroll is small, thin parchment sealed with a smudge of wax. No crest, no colors, just a sentence written in rough, hurried ink. No help is coming. That's it. 4 words, no explanation, no context, no signature. The guard reads it twice, then hands it to the captain. The captain doesn't say anything. He rolls the parchment up, pockets it, and walks back to the keep. And the square stays quiet, because what is there to say? You feel the weight of those words settle across the town like ash. No help is coming. You watch people try to process it. Some blink slowly, as if they didn't hear it properly. Others look to the priest, as though a prayer might rewrite the sentence. One woman begins to sob. Another simply sits on the ground. You don't move. You feel cold, even in the sunlight. You knew, of course. Everyone did. But hearing it, reading it, makes it real in a way nothing else has. Hope isn't just gone. It's been buried. No reinforcements, no relief, no open gate and cheering crowds. Just more waiting, more hunger. More of the same. You return home and sit by the hearth, though there's no fire. You hold your cup of water but don't drink it. You stare at the grain of the wood in the floor. You don't cry. You don't scream. You simply exist. Because what else is there to do? Later, the priest tries to gather people in the chapel. He speaks softly. He says, the message is not the end. He says, they may not come, but we are still here. He says, what endures is not rescue, but each other. And people listen, but not as before, not with hearts open and eager, with hearts shielded by grief. You see a young man burn the last letter he received from his brother. He says nothing. He just watches the paper curl and blacken in the fire. You hear someone ask, why send the pigeon at all? No one answers. That night, a different kind of quiet settles over the town. Heavier, deeper, like the silence after a bell stops ringing, when the air still vibrates but the sound is gone. No help is coming, and so you sit in the dark and wrap your arms around your knees and feel the cold begin to seep through the walls, and for the first time you stop making plans, not because you've given up, but because planning was always a form of hoping, and hope tonight feels too fragile to hold. It happens slowly, then all at once. At first, it's just little things. A piece of bread missing from a windowsill, a jar of pickled beets mysteriously gone from a shelf. You tell yourself it's forgetfulness. Maybe you misplaced it. Maybe someone else in the house took it and didn't say, but then it grows. You hear whispers, quiet ones, the kind that stop when someone walks by. Stories of food hidden in floorboards, of a sack of barley stolen from a storage room, of someone seen sneaking from house to house after dark. No one confronts, no one accuses. There's an understanding now, unspoken and grim. What's left belongs to whoever can keep it. The rules bend. And with them, so do people. You used to know your neighbours. You knew who made the best stew, who lent their shovel without being asked, who always gave children the largest share of the pie. Now you look at them differently. Now you count their steps, study their faces, wonder what's behind their closed doors. A woman with kind eyes suddenly refuses to share a pot of soup she once offered freely. A boy trades his father's ring for a strip of leather soaked in broth. One night, you hear footsteps outside, soft, careful. You don't move, you don't call out. You just listen. They pass. You don't sleep the rest of the night. By morning, you move your remaining food to a new hiding spot, inside the chimney flue, behind the loose stone in the wall. You feel ashamed. Then you see your neighbour do the same, and suddenly it feels normal. What would have once been theft is now survival. A man sells his boots for wine, not water. Wine. You hear someone say he just wanted to feel warm one more time. You wonder if it worked. You find yourself negotiating not in coins, but in cloth, in wood chips, in secrets. A woman gives you half a loaf in exchange for news of where the guard keeps his extra firewood. You consider whether it's worth it. You tell her anyway. Your sense of self begins to shift. You were a cooper once, a maker of barrels, a quiet man who worked with his hands and shared generously. Now, your hands tremble. Not from cold, from decisions you're not sure you recognize yourself making. You see a child holding a turnip like treasure. You see a dog with a collar but no owner. You see a man chewing something you don't recognize, and you don't ask what it is. The descent is quiet. No trumpets, no declarations. Just need. Pure and constant. One night, a woman is caught sneaking into the storage near the keep. They don't punish her. They just don't let her leave. You hear she's still in there, kept with the dried lentils and salted fish, guarded not by swords, but by silence. Another day, you hear about a man who cooked his last hen. Not because he was starving, not yet, but because he couldn't bear to watch it suffer anymore. He wept as he plucked it. People trade memories now. A story of real butter earns a handful of peas. A tale of summer flowers buys an hour near someone's fire. You sit with others and whisper about things that feel imaginary. Warm baths, fresh bread, laughter that wasn't forced. And through it all, the siege continues. Unmoved, unchanged. You stop waiting for the enemy to attack. You begin to wonder if they even need to. Because the gate doesn't need to fall if the people inside do. You catch your reflection in a bucket of water. You look thinner, harder. Not cruel, not yet, but colder. You still share when you can, but less often. You tell yourself it's prudence, strategy. You wonder, sometimes, if it's just fear. One night, a knock on your door. You don't answer. You wait. And when it comes again, softer, more pleading. You still don't move. Eventually, it stops. You sit in the dark, listening to the crackle of the candle wick, and you wonder, who did you become to survive? And how far would you go to keep surviving? It doesn't happen with a roar. There's no sudden eruption, no wave of screams, no horn splitting the sky. It starts with a sound, low, deep, not loud, but ancient. You hear it before dawn, a vibration in the earth, a subtle tremor beneath your feet as you stir from a restless sleep. At first, you think it's a dream, but then it comes again, a faint rumble, as if the bones of the town are groaning under unseen weight. You rise and open your window. The sky is barely grey. The torches on the wall flicker against the wind. Then it comes, a scream. Not far, one of the guards, then another, louder, then the horn. This one is real. You hear it from the keep, long, low, unmistakable, the call you've dreaded. You dress quickly. Your hands tremble as you tie your boots. Your chest tightens, not from fear, but from the suddenness of it. How quickly the waiting becomes reality. The walls are under attack. You run outside and join the others heading toward the gate. Some carry weapons, rusty swords, broken spears. Others hold torches. A few, nothing at all. You pass a boy no older than 15 gripping a pot lid like a shield. The sound intensifies. Metal striking wood, arrows slicing air, shouts. The crash of something heavy. You reach the tower just as another horn sounds. A different pitch. A warning. You climb the ladder. At the top you see them. The enemy. Closer than ever before. They've built a tower. Ramshackle, but tall. It leans against the outer wall like a drunk against a doorframe. Ladders reach from its mouth to your battlements. Figures climb. One slips and falls. Another replaces him. Flames flicker below. They've lit a fire near the north gate. A distraction, or the beginning of something worse. You don't know. You only know that they're here, really here. You duck as an arrow hisses past your ear. Someone beside you isn't so lucky. He falls backward, eyes wide, mouth open. No sound, just shock. You drag him away, your hands sticky. You don't look at his face. The ground quakes again. You peer down. They're using a ram now. Wood, iron, bone. It hits the gate. Once, twice, with rhythm, with hunger. The town is awake now. Every home spills people into the street. Some run toward the walls. Others run away. A woman cries for her son. A man throws boiling water from a window. You hear a roar, not of rage, but of desperation. They breach the outer door. Not fully, just a crack, but it's enough. Enough to let the fire breathe. Flames climb the wood like a lover, wrapping the gate in tongues of red. You step back, coughing. The heat is sudden, greedy. A guard pours a bucket of water over the door. It steams, hisses, and laughs at his effort. You hear something crash behind you. A roof, caving. Then the screams begin. You don't remember drawing your blade, but it's in your hand now. You move without thinking. Swing, duck, push. It's not a battle. Not really. It's a storm. Chaotic. Wet with blood and smoke. Someone grabs your arm. You swing. It's your neighbor. You don't apologize. There's no time. You lose track of where the wall is, of where you are. You see a child on the ground. You lift her. You don't know who she belongs to. You carry her toward the chapel. Someone slams into you. You fall. She falls. She screams. You push yourself up. Your side aches. You taste copper. You run again. The chapel doors are open. Inside, people gather, praying, shouting, holding each other. It's safer there. For now. You set her down. You turn back, because you can't stop moving. Because stopping means thinking, and thinking means feeling. You return to the wall. The gate is gone. Ash and splinters. But the attackers haven't come through. Not yet. They retreat. Smoke cloaks their retreat like a veil. And you realize this wasn't the real breach. It was a test, a message. They can get in, whenever they want, and now you know it. Everyone knows it. You sit, on the steps, covered in soot and blood. The town quiets. Only the crackle of fire remains. Someone cries, someone prays, someone laughs. Not with joy, but madness. You close your eyes. You're still alive. You breathe. For now, you've survived the breach. But you know it wasn't the last. You don't remember the moment the fighting stopped. There was no declaration, no trumpet, no ceasefire echoing across the valley. Just a gradual fading of shouts, of metal, of the panic that had gripped the town like a clenched fist. One moment you're crouched behind a broken cart, heart pounding so hard it's all you can hear, and the next, silence, not peace, not relief, just absence. You wait, still gripping your weapon, a dented kitchen knife, until your arm aches. Then slowly, painfully, you rise. The smoke is thinner now, drifting in lazy spirals through the streets. The fires, mostly out. The sky, overcast. You expect to hear cries of victory. Instead, you hear coughing, whimpering. The low, hollow moan of someone calling a name, again and again, with no answer. The town is not a town anymore. It's a wound. You walk through what remains. The bakery, gone. Nothing but blackened stones and the twisted iron of the old oven door. The square is littered with ash, glass, scraps of fabric, blood, not puddles, smears, dragged bodies, quick attempts at aid, moments of panic that didn't end well. The chapel doors hang open, one split down the middle. Inside, the pews are overturned. The candles burned down to stubs. Someone has written names on the wall, dozens of them, in charcoal. You recognize only a few. The rest make your stomach twist. You pass the well. The rope is broken. The bucket lies in pieces. No one's drawing water. You see the girl you helped days ago, the one with the carrot. She's alive. She's sitting on a step, her arms around her knees, eyes staring at something only she can see. You don't speak to her. You just nod. She doesn't blink. In the alley behind the blacksmith shop, you find a man lying on his back. You think he's sleeping at first. Then you notice the hole in his chest. A clean wound, precise. You cover him with a cloth. Not because anyone asked you to, because leaving him uncovered feels wrong. You wonder who he was, if he had a family, if they're still alive. The enemy is gone, for now. You don't know why. Maybe they lost interest. Maybe they didn't expect the resistance. Maybe it was never about conquest. Maybe they just wanted to see if they could break you. And you're not sure what's left to break. You make your way to your home. Your door is ajar. Inside, the table is overturned. The pantry, emptied. Someone's been here. You're not surprised. You set things upright again. You sweep the floor. You find a half-burned candle and light it. Not for light, for ritual. You sit on the stool, elbows on your knees, and look around. The walls are still standing. You are still breathing. And somehow, that feels like a betrayal. Because you thought there would be more. Some sort of release, a cheer, a prayer of thanks, a moment of clarity. But instead, there's just this emptiness. You survived. But it doesn't feel like winning. It feels like waking from a nightmare and realizing the world outside is just as cold. You step outside again. You help someone lift a beam from a doorway. You bandage a cut. You find a jug of water and pass it down a line of quiet hands. You don't speak. No one does. Because the truth is this: whether you won or lost doesn't matter. What matters is what's left, and what's left is ash and pain and people too tired to grieve, but still here, still breathing, still waiting for something, anything, to feel real again. You start counting, not days, not meals, not how many times you've walked the same path through the broken market. You start counting the people who are no longer here. At first, It's accidental. A face you expect to see in a doorway, a voice that never calls from the window, a pair of boots missing from the chapel steps. Then it becomes intentional. A roll call of the missing, done silently in your mind as you walk through the wounded town. The list grows fast, too fast. There's Marta, who always watered her herbs with a song. Her shutters are nailed shut now. No one's seen her in a week. There's Joran, the boy who used to chase chickens for sport. Someone found one of his shoes near the wall. Just one. There's the baker and his wife and their little girl with the crooked smile. Their home is ash. No bodies, just ash. You think of the priest. He still lights candles, but his voice has changed. It trembles now. Not with age, with emptiness. His sermons are shorter, his hands shake. He blesses the dead with eyes that no longer rise from the floor. You pass the square. Someone has written names again, in soot this time over the old list. You stop and stare. One of them is familiar, a friend. You'd held their hand when the first ration line grew too long. You hadn't realized they were gone. It hits harder than you expect, not because they were closest to you, but because you didn't notice their absence until now. That's the cruelty of siege. Not just the hunger, the sickness, the fear, but the forgetting. The slow fade of memory, like candlelight left too long in the wind. You start carrying names in your pocket, scratched on old parchment. Every night you unfold the list, you add to it, you whisper each name before sleep. It becomes a ritual, a way of preserving the truth when your world keeps shrinking. Some names you can't recall fully. You write, the woman with the blue shawl, the man who made bird cages, little Anna, who fed the dog scraps. You don't know their full stories. But you remember something, and sometimes something is enough. Others begin doing the same. You see folded notes placed on windowsills, bits of cloth tied to trees, names scratched into stone with charcoal, not gravestones, not yet, but placeholders for grief. One morning, you help dig a shallow pit near the chapel. No one says what it's for. Everyone already knows. A man weeps as he lowers a bundle wrapped in linen. No one asks who. No one asks how. You just stand together in silence. Later you walk past a door with a symbol drawn on it, a circle with 3 dots inside. It's a sign, a quiet one. It means no one left here. You pause. You make a mark in your book. That night you dream of the voices, not the screams, the everyday ones. The market haggling, the joke that used to make your friend laugh until he wheezed, the lullaby from 2 houses down, the argument about cheese. When you wake, you try to hold on to them. You fail, but you write them down anyway. You begin to understand why old songs survive, not because they were the best, but because someone kept singing them, even when it hurt. You sing now, softly, under your breath. A song your mother sang. You don't remember all the words, but you hum the tune. You keep it alive, like the names, like the stories, because you know, more than ever, that survival isn't just the beating of a heart. It's remembering who once stood beside you and whispering their names into the silence. So they don't vanish. So you don't vanish. So some part of what was still lives, even in the rubble. The gates open slowly, not with ceremony, not with a horn or trumpet, or the triumphant shout of survivors. Just a groan of old wood, the creak of metal, and the cautious push of 2 men too tired to lift their own heads. You stand at the edge of the square and watch as the sun spills through the opening. It's brighter than you remember. Or maybe you've just grown used to the dimness, the filtered light of ash, of dust, of grief clouding the air. You don't rush toward it. No one does. Because after all this time, after everything that's happened, freedom feels uncertain, fragile, like a promise made by someone you no longer trust. And yet, the wind that enters is real, cool, clean. alive. It brushes your cheek and you close your eyes, letting it pass over you like a hand, like a blessing. You step forward, carefully. The streets are littered with quiet. People move slowly, as if learning to walk again. You see a boy pick up a stone and hold it to the sky, watching the light play across its surface. You see an old woman kneel to touch the dirt, her fingers tracing patterns only she understands. The chapel doors are wide now. The priest stands in the doorway, not saying anything, just watching. His eyes glisten, not from prayer, from relief and mourning. You walk toward the edge of town, where the wall's shadows fall across the ground like old scars. You place your hand on the stone, still warm from the morning sun. It no longer feels like a prison, not entirely. Beyond it, the fields are quiet. No camps, no soldiers, just grass moving like waves beneath the breeze. It looks the same, but you know it isn't. Neither are you. The siege didn't end with victory. It ended with endurance. No feast waits, no celebration, just silence. And yet, it feels different now. Not empty. Open. You return home. The door hangs on one hinge. The floor is covered in dust, but it's still standing. You sweep. You open the shutters. You let the air in. You find a scrap of bread, saved for a worse day. You eat it anyway, because today you need to remember that you can. That survival isn't just breath and heartbeat. It's choosing to taste again, to see again, to live again. Later you light a candle and place it on your doorstep. Not for the dead, for the living. A signal, a small fire in the darkness that says, someone is still here. You walk through the town at dusk. You see others doing the same. Sweeping, repairing, sitting quietly on thresholds. No one speaks much. There's no need. Your eyes meet and you nod. And that is enough. Enough to begin again. Because living after the siege is not like before. There are gaps now, in the streets, in your heart, in the stories you used to tell. But you are not the same either. You are quieter, stronger, more aware of each moment, each bite, each breath. You don't take light for granted anymore. You don't take sleep for granted. You don't take kindness for granted. The siege taught you the value of small things. And small things are what rebuild the world. So you keep going. You plant a seed in the soil behind your house. You hum an old song as you mend a broken chair. You write down a name on your wall, a name you almost forgot, and surround it with flowers drawn in charcoal. You sit beneath the sky, watching the stars return, and you breathe. You survived, not through strength alone, but through memory, through ritual, through the quiet, persistent act of staying. And in the quiet, you feel something stir, not hope, not yet, but possibility. And that for now is more than enough.